In this lesson, we will learn how to divide by powers of 10. First of all, let's review. You can add a decimal to a whole number without changing the value by placing it where? So let's think about if I have the number 5 and I want to add a decimal to this. I can't add the decimal here because now it has become 5/10 and it has a lesser value. But if I place a decimal here, then it doesn't actually change the value of the 5. So for my paper, I can add a decimal to a whole number without changing the value by placing it after the number. The next section asks us about when multiplying a whole number by a whole number greater than 0, the product will be greater than, less than, or equal to the original number. So for example, if I have the whole number 5 and I multiply it by any number that is at least greater than 0, say we go with the number 2, I'm going to get a product of 10. And 10 is greater than the original number that I started with. In addition, if I take 5 and I multiply it by 1, that's going to give me an answer of 5, or product of 5, and that's equal to the amount of the original number. So in our answer, we could say when multiplying by a whole number, or when multiplying a whole number by a whole number greater than 0, the product will be greater than or equal to the original number. In division, it's a little bit different. So in division, when dividing by a whole number, the quotient will be blank than the dividend. So if I have 25 and I want to divide it by 5, I'm going to get an answer or a quotient of 5. And that quotient is less than the number that I started with, the dividend. So unlike multiplication, when I am dividing by a whole number, the quotient will be less than the dividend. So dividing by powers of 10 is much like multiplying by powers of 10. We're moving the decimal and we're moving it a certain number of places. So if we're multiplying, if you look over here on the left side, we're multiplying by the standard form by powers of 10, not written in exponential form, and we can use the trick of looking at the number of zeros in that number. But when we are dividing by powers of 10, we are going to move in the opposite direction because we're going to get a smaller value. So instead of moving to the right, we're going to move to the left. And we're going to look at the number of zeros in our power of 10 to determine how many spots we are moving. So if I were to look at the first number here, 5 divided by 10, I have to identify where my decimal is. So if I have the number 5, and we talked about this, and I wanted to add a decimal, I would have to put the decimal after the 5. And because I'm now multiplying by or dividing by 10, 10 has 1 0, I'm going to then move that decimal point to the left because in division I'm going to get a smaller number and my decimal point is now going to move in that direction. Therefore, my new answer is going to be 5/10. So in the next number, we have 5 divided by 100. So if I put my 5, I put my decimal point after the 5. I'm going to move my decimal point 2 places because there are 2 zeros. And because I don't have anything in this place, I'm going to have to fill in a 5. So the answer, I'm going to have to fill in a 0. So the answer for this problem would be 500. And you'll notice a pattern. Every time I add another 0, I'm going to have another 0 in between the 5 and a decimal point, and my number is just going to keep getting smaller and smaller. So now if I am dividing 5 divided by 1,000, and because 1,000 has 3 zeros, I'm now going to be moving my decimal point 3 places to the right, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to get an answer of 5 thousandths. And I'm going to continue that. Alright, at the bottom you'll see here we have some decimals, and the decimals actually already placed in the number. So we're going to follow the same pattern. We just already have a decimal written in the number. So if I look at the first one, 31 and 6/10 divided by 10, 10 has 1 0. So I'm going to move that decimal point one place to the left, and my new answer is going to be 3 16/100. The next problem has me moving the decimal point 2 places to the left because there are 2 zeros, and so my answer is going to be 316 thousandths. Pause the video and see if you can identify the last two answers. Check your work. Did you get it correct? All right, now let's look at whether or not we're going to have the same type of answer if we are dividing by an exponent. So just like we did with multiplication, with our exponents, we are looking for the trick. And the trick is we are going to move our decimal point the same number of the exponent in the problem. So just like we did with multiplication, for this problem we will move the decimal point 2 places, but because I am now dividing, I'm going to move it 2 places to the left. So if you see the number, I have 765. I'm going to place my decimal point, the only place I can add it without changing the value. And now I am dividing it by 10 to the second power, so I'm going to move it 2 places to the left and add it in there. That's going to give me an answer of 7 65/100. If I look at the next problem, now I'm going to move my decimal point 3 places to the left, 1, 2, 3, and that's going to give me an answer of 765 thousandths. I'm sorry, 765 thousandths. Go ahead and pause the video and see if you can answer the last two on your own. Hopefully you got it correct. Now let's look at the bottom. Again, we're going to do the same thing, but the decimal point is already in the number, and we're looking to the exponents to see how many places to move it. Pause the video and see how you do on these last 3 problems. Did you get it correct? Hopefully you did. So if you're looking at the bottom, the last thing we need to fill in is it says move the decimal to the blank in problems that have exponents. Are we moving it to the left or are we moving it to the right? The same number as your exponent in the power of 10. And because we are dividing and we are getting a smaller number, we are going to move our decimal point to the left. In this lesson, we learned how to divide by powers of 10.